Okay, I have breaking news.
Breaking news.
I have breaking news. Guess who I just got a Facebook friend request from?
Rachel.
Steve.
Uh-oh.
Yep. Steve's back on Facebook.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
I give him 6 months.
Before what?
He bails again.
Oh, before.
Steve, what are you doing?
This is the AT Banter podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter.
Wait, did I hit that at the right time?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good. Yeah,
I was just going to wing it too.
I'm not used to being in control of the cowbell, so I don't even know when the cue is.
I know.
It's normally Steve's gig. My name is Rob Minot. Joining me today, of course, is Mr. Ryan Fleury.
Hello, everyone.
And yeah, you're listening to the AT Banter podcast, as if you have not figured that out yet.
Well, I guess they have. I was going to say welcome to our new listeners, but
yeah.
And, of course, welcome to our existing listeners. And you're right, they've figured it out.
In case you thought you clicked on the Joe Rogan experience, neither of us are Joe Rogan.
No.
And we will not be talking about anything that Joe Rogan talks about. You ever listen to that show?
Never.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I've seen his name, but I've never followed.
Yeah, he has some interesting interviews.
Yeah.
You get some big names. You get like Elon Musk.
Well, he's a much bigger name than we are.
Well, maybe. You don't know.
You want me to get Elon Musk? Ask him about accessibility of his self-driving vehicles?
Yeah, let's see what he has to say about accessibility. I'm sure he has some interesting things to say.
I'll work on that.
Well, before we launch into anything too much, let's tell the fine folks what we are doing today.
Today we are speaking with Eric Damery, the Vice President of Software Products Management at Vispero.
Makers of what?
Makers of JAWS and Zoom Text and Fusion and CCTVs, all sorts of good stuff. Braille technology.
Excellent. Well, that will be interesting.
Yeah, it'll kind of get us caught up to speed on what's been happening at Vispero and what might be coming down the pike.
Yeah, I think you got a few questions for him.
A few.
Before we get there, though, a couple things that I thought we could talk about.
We have exciting news.
Well, yeah, we do. Tell the people what our exciting news is.
We are now the Canadian distributor for the Braille Me, 20-cell Braille note taker.
Wait, is it a note taker or is it a Braille display?
It's both. It has a very basic note-taking ability, as well as a 20-cell Braille display. So you can use it with NVDA, VoiceOver, iOS, Android, so Braille back. So yeah, very, very slick, very small, very portable, lightweight, good battery life, about 10 hours.
Yep.
Very, very crisp Braille. Very nice Braille.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this, though, is that it uses a different type of technology to drive the Braille that's able to make it a little bit cheaper. So I feel like that's the really important component of this, is that it's nice to have something in a different price range than normal Braille displays and note takers. You know, we just need the market needs a low to mid-range device like this badly, because, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 it's just so much. Like I certainly couldn't afford any sort of device like that.
Well, even a 14-cell Braille display is more expensive than the Braille Me. We're selling the Braille Me at $750 Canadian. Under $1,000 for a 20-cell Braille display / note taker. You can't beat that price.
Yeah.
14 cells are, double that. Well, almost double that. So, yeah, check it out on our website at canastech.com.
Look at you plugging already.
It's exciting.
Mr. Commercial. Yeah, it is. It is exciting.
It's very small. It's portable. I was pretty sold on it when I had it on my desk for a couple days.
And believe me, dear listeners, when Ryan doesn't like something, even if we're carrying it, he lets us know.
That's
I'm not
right.
going to name any names.
Nope, can't do that.
But Ryan's a straight shooter. So if he says something's good, it's good.
When it comes to products, if it's not something I like, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not the right product for somebody else. But it just means I don't like it. So
Yep.
I like the Braille Me. Everybody should check it out.
Yeah, for sure. What else do we want to talk about? You know what? Actually, speaking of self-promotion, the other thing I want to talk a little bit about is the show. And what's kind of been going on behind the mics. We've been talking a lot about the show since the new year, and we're kind of looking at ways that we can improve the show. We're always interested in trying to sort of up our game. It's coming up to 4 years we've been doing this, and I think back to when we started, when we had no idea what we're doing. And then compared to now, which we still really don't have any idea what we're doing. We're still just three guys in a basement with some microphones, doing our thing. I guess what I wanted to sort of say and talk a little bit about is just that, we are looking at some possible format changes in the coming months, ? Maybe weeks, who knows? We'll see. I guess what I'd like to do is put it out there for people. If they do have some suggestions as to what they might want to hear or a format change, feel free to drop us an email. Especially right now, because, again, we're looking at it pretty seriously and looking at trying to improve the show anyways. So, if you got a suggestion, drop us a line. It can't hurt. I think that one of the big things for me, what I would like to try to do is certainly engage the audience, engage the community a little bit more, so that we're not just kind of talking at people. We want our listeners to participate in our conversations as well. So
live show.
Yeah, I know you're big on that live show. I don't know.
Live stream.
I don't know how well we would do without editing, man. We can try it. We'll talk. I didn't realize that was one of your suggestions.
It always has been.
Oh, God.
Well, it's just it's another thing to try.
Yeah, for sure. Fair enough.
Flops of flops.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and like you said, if people are interested in sending us some suggestions, definitely send it along.
Feel free.
cowbell@atbanter.com. We're open to just about anything, and it may or may not make it into the show. So.
Yeah. So look for that in the coming weeks. Hey, we got an email.
We did get an email. We got an email from a listener. Yay! He deserves a cowbell.
Oh, shit.
There you go.
Woot.
Leo, that's for you. Thanks for sending us your message.
Let me just read her out here. Hello, gentlemen. I always enjoy listening to your podcasts. Your most recent one with Karthik was most interesting. So now he's referencing, it was last week?
Yep.
Last week we talked to Karthik, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Karthik Cannon from Envision, about the Envision glasses.
Yep.
He goes on, Karthik and his team have really developed a powerful app, and it will be interesting to watch how their partnership with Google Glass goes. I hate that. I hate Google Glass so much. I hate saying that. Initially, cost will be a determining factor for many when it comes to putting out the money. What is most interesting is the work done by Karthik's team to give us a constantly developing app with many features. Smartphones will become more and more the norm for users in the future, even replacing for some people their reliance on computers. Very true. Then there are wearables. Their partnership with Google is certainly one worth watching and will be interesting to see where other players go. I hope that Apple might emulate what we have here with Karthik, but I have the feeling that Apple has its own plans. I do hope that Apple will give us equivalent apps and glasses. Time will tell. As they say, stay tuned. Keep those podcasts coming, Leo. Very nice. Thanks, Leo. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that Apple Apple always just dances to their own tune. They're doing their own thing. I'm sure that accessibility will be a part of that.
Yeah, but like I said last week, I think Apple is going to come out with a pair of AR smart glasses.
Yeah,
I think AR is the direction these companies are going in. The nice thing about Apple, though, is they have the accessibility baked in and have for years. So if the glasses are based off iOS, there's some huge potential there for accessibility.
Sure.
But we don't know yet. So.
It's true. But I mean, the benefit of Google Glass is that, they're ahead of the game. They're at the front of the pack because that is a product that has been around for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a good platform for developers to work on. And I think that's that the fact that they do have that head start is I think they're going to be the first to market with a real mainstream wearable pair of smart glasses. I really do. I think Apple's too far behind to really.
No, I don't think Apple's that far behind either. It wouldn't take much.
Oh, you don't think so? I do. I mean, I think that they're still. I mean, they haven't really even come out with any sort of announcement what they're doing. So I think that they're. I would guess they're still a year or so from even announcing.
I don't think so. I think this year at their WWDC conference, we're going to hear something.
Well, maybe you're right. Maybe they're waiting for the conference to make the announcement. But I mean, still, even if they do, you're probably still looking at a year, 6 months to a year.
Yeah, they might show some at CES next year, but as to being publicly available,
they're still a ways away. Yeah. And I feel like Google could pull that trigger at any point. I don't know. I think they're just biding their time. Maybe they're just getting enough developers on board that are developing enough products. Or developing enough apps, rather. Who knows? But I think that Google is probably poised to be the leader, at least initially. But in any case, I really do think that Envision, that I think they made the right choice to pair with Google Glass. I think they're like I said, they're going to be ahead of the pack. I think that they're going to be the ones that are ubiquitous, at least for the first year or two of the big wearable.
The mainstream explosion. Wearable, yeah.
Yep.
Mainstream wearable. We did talk about other form factors, right? Like the OrCam and the other proprietary glasses that are out there. But leveraging the mainstream, definitely gives you a lot more potential moving forward.
Well, sure. I mean, just think of what the phone market would be if we lived in a world where, say, Apple, and all the other the Android developers didn't have accessibility baked in, and that the idea of a talking smartphone was a proprietary phone. Like you as a blind person, you'd actually have to go buy a special phone that actually talked. The market would be very different.
Yeah, and those do exist for that demographic that want that. But
they do. Yeah. But I mean, just life is so much better when you have accessibility built into a mainstream product.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what we need for a wearable. We need a wearable that's a mainstream product that also has accessibility built into it. That's just the ideal. We don't want proprietary wearables.
Agreed.
AT wearables. So
agreed.
Good. That deserves a cowbell. We're agreeing on something. See, maybe that's what we should do as a segment on the new show.
What's that? Review?
Where we just argue.
Well, we do that, and you always edit it.
Yeah, well, that's true. That is kind of true. We don't always do that. Just think back to those lunchroom conversations that we used to have that we used to argue. Maybe people would like that. We just have hey, now we argue for 10 minutes.
That's the new idea for the outtake show at the end of the year. Just all the argument edits you cut out of the show.
There's not that many. There's really only
12,
only a few.
13. All right.
We can have listeners write in suggestions for topics
to argue about.
Yeah. Pop-Tarts or wagon wheels? Go.
Pop-Tarts.
Well, see, now I have to take a wagon wheel there, but I want Pop-Tarts. But see, I always joke with you. I mean, you were on the debate club in high school, so that
Yeah, but I was horrible.
Unfair...
I sucked.
Yeah, well, whatever. We didn't even have a debate club.
But your school had a population of 12.
I know. This is Rob Minot, co-host for the world-famous assistive technology podcast, AT Banter. And I want to break in here on the show in order to tell you about a pretty amazing product that our parent company, Canadian Assistive Technology, has started to carry. It's called the Canute 360, and it's the world's first multi-line digital braille ebook reader. Now, the Canute 360 was developed by and with the blindness community, which makes it unique, and it makes reading digital braille ebooks affordable, enjoyable, and practical. You see, the Canute 360 has, as you may have guessed, 360 cells, which is basically 9 lines of 40 characters of braille. This gives the Canute 360 a distinct advantage when it comes to reading braille because of this multi-line capability. Now, the Canute 360 supports all 6-dot braille codes and is ideal not only for books, but for math, charts, tables, and even music, and this makes it the perfect choice for the student in your household. And there's even more good news. With its proprietary technology, the Canute 360 is less expensive than most other single-line 40-cell braille displays on the market, at only $3,355. For more information on the Canute 360 or to order yours today, just head on over to the Canadian Assistive Technology website at www.canastech.com. That's www.canastech.com. Or you can call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. That's 1-844-795-8324. And now, back to the show.
Joining us now is Eric Damery, Vice President of Software Product Management for Vispero. Hi, Eric. Are you there?
Yeah, I am. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Well, listen, we want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and talking to us. We're excited to actually be talking to someone from Vispero.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
So why don't we start off just telling us maybe a little bit about yourself and a little bit of how long you actually have been in the industry, because I get the feeling that it's been a while.
Yeah, I found this industry back in 1993. I was in the process of kind of looking for a career change. I had finished a college degree around 1990, and I didn't really land on anything that I enjoyed. So in 93, I was looking for stuff that would be enjoyable, and my dad, who was a blinded veteran, had gotten some equipment from Ted Henter's company, Henter Joyce. And they were the Arkenstone dealer at the time. Arkenstone was the company that distributed OpenBook. Of course, and a lot of veterans got that for scanning and reading material. So that was the first version of OpenBook that he received, and when he was going to get the computer, he asked me to come to the house to help him make sure he'd be able to use it after they left. And I was pretty impressed with the independence that it created, and I got pretty jazzed looking at it, and I thought, geez, it would be awful nice to actually work in a space like this that helps to contribute and do something good rather than work on accounting software or anything like that. So I went and contacted Ted and his wife Mel, and went in and met them the end of 1993 and started working for them in January of 94. And that was 1 year before the Windows version of JAWS was released. The DOS version, of course, had been out since about 88. So I came in the end of the JAWS for DOS time, and just before the Windows one started. And I always remember back that I kind of learned how to run Windows with a screen reader rather than a mouse. And so that always helped me have a little bit more understanding than many sighted people that use screen reading, because I really learned Windows from a keyboard.
Right.
Well, I was saying that to Rob yesterday about, having you on the show, Eric, and how you're a sighted JAWS user, and you probably are a much better JAWS user than a lot of blind people who have been using JAWS for, 10, 15 years. Like, you know the product inside out. You've been in it so long. Is it the giving people the independence and the freedom to, use computers that keeps you in this industry?
It is. It's having been around the industry a long time. I'll tell you, it is unique in the sense that I don't see a lot of people that come into the business and stick around for more than a year and leave. There are those that came in and got right out, but there aren't that many people, it seems like, that came into this business and then took off. A lot of people change hats. They work in different companies, but lots of people stay in this business, whether they're visually impaired or not. They tend to stay in the industry, and because I think, it's like a family. And when we get together, whether it's at a CSUN technology show or NFB or ACB conventions each July, we see a lot of the same people. It's like coming home, and we all know each other.
Yeah.
The people that work in the industry, everybody knows everybody, and we're at the end of the day, we're all doing the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's our experience as well. I mean, even just on a personal level, between the three and the four of us that are sort of form our current partnership. It's the same thing, that we all, had that crossroads that we came to where we could have picked a different industry. But, at the end of the day, we all sort of chose this one because it's such a rewarding industry to be a part of.
Yeah, and it's changed a lot. I'll tell you, back in the 1990s, I can remember we used to go to the CSUN convention at the LAX Marriott Hotel there, which was a pretty small venue, and the exhibit hall usually covered 2 rooms, and there were very few big businesses that you didn't really see Microsofts and Googles there. You saw lots of mom and pop companies, and at the end of the day during the convention at night, all the vendors, everyone would get together and whether it be dinner or party or whatever, but everybody kind of hung out together and enjoyed each other's company, and we were small businesses. When I started with Hunter Joyce, I think there were about 9 or 10 people in the business, and today, now we're under the umbrella of Vispero with all these companies, and we're over 400 people, and it's a lot different.
So I want to step back a little bit and talk about screen readers in particular, especially in that during that time frame when you first came on, because it must have been a very interesting time, because the early to mid 90s, that was also when the personal computer really started to become a thing. More and more, like they became affordable, and almost every household started to actually have a personal computer. So that must have really caused a little bit of an explosion in terms of the need for something like a screen reader like JAWS. Is that what you guys sort of saw firsthand?
Yeah, it did. And actually, as the GUI interface, as we call it, as Microsoft Windows was starting to come in, and everyone realized that jobs and their daily use at home of PCs would go a different route than the DOS text-based solution that screen readers, had I won't say easily, but much more easily than the GUI interface. DOS screen readers were able to interact with lots of different applications, and that wasn't too complicated. But Windows, of course, was graphical and mouse-driven, and people were really petrified that they were going to be losing careers and losing jobs. And I know we released JAWS for Windows in January of 1995, later than people would have liked, but sooner than we wanted to. It wasn't ready. The first 6 months, we had very little stability, yet the consumers were just clamoring for it because they knew they had to get ahead of the curve if they were going to keep their jobs. So that was a difficult time, and there weren't any what they call APIs that we could tap into to try and do things. So we injected ourselves into the video chain to try and keep track of what's being sent to the screen and build our own little off-screen models that we refer to it as basically it's a database of what's going on and what window's on top and what text was there and did we remember. And oh yeah, by the way, let's hope we don't crash their computer. So there was a lot of that going on, and it was very dangerous times. And there were, it was tricky, and there was some really interesting people. There was a Canadian named Costician, you guys may have remembered, out of the eastern side of the country, and I forget. Window Bridge was the product they created. And he was that was really the first Windows screen reader that got released, I think. There was another one called ProTalk also out of Canada. Mm-hmm. And I forget there was a father-son that had ProTalk. And then one of the early adapters, one of the guys that really created the off-screen model that helped to mentor the development of JAWS was Jim Thatcher from IBM, who had done the OS2 screen reader. And so there was a lot of really interesting people back then inventing, a solution to try and get around a pretty big problem. So it was fun.
Do you guys have a museum there at Vispero where you can actually go back to like an IBM 300GL running JAWS 3.2 and Windows 95 just to see how far you've come?
We moved about a year and a half ago. We moved out of the second facility that we were in. We had left the original building that I was in with Henner Joyce in 1998. We moved into this one location in St. Petersburg, and we stayed there until about 2 years ago. And as we were making the move to come to this new facility, we were going to be leaving our offices. I won't say plush offices, by the way, but at least we had an office, and we were coming to a more open office atmosphere with a much less space. So it was time to purge a little bit, and it was funny going through the file cabinets and finding all the old cassette tapes, 3.5-inch floppy disks, and everyone saying, "You've got to save this stuff. You've got to keep this." And it's like, no, it's time to retire some of this. So I let a lot of it go. But we did keep some of the older equipment around, and we have set up here. We were in a beautiful facility now in Clearwater. With a nice view of the top of Tampa Bay, and in the office here, they've got up in the lobby area, we've got all kinds of equipment out. It's always fun when someone comes to visit our office and they're waiting for you, and of course they can't stand themselves. They have to get up and walk around and look at all of this equipment and then ask you about everything when you get up there. So it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, and that had to have been such a stressful time to try to be developing something like a screen reader, because I think my first personal PC, I think I got maybe when I was around 1995 maybe. And let me tell you, people who may not remember this time because they weren't born yet, everything crashed your computer. It didn't matter what. Like, your computer just crashed just sitting there. So I can imagine something as complex as a screen reader. I mean, that blue screen of death must just have been you must have just seen it in your dreams.
I did. It was, I know it was version 1.21 that didn't crash right away. I remember the version, and it was June of 1995.
That's funny.
So if you were running a PC with JAWS for Windows prior to June 1995, I guarantee you saw a blue screen. But things got better.
Yeah.
And people were anxious, and we spent a lot of time on the phone with customers and trying to sort things out. And of course, all the different video cards and video drivers and all of these things played a role in it. And poor tech support people. I mean,
Yeah.
My hat goes off to the guys in the early days.
Well, and I do know as a distributor for Freedom Scientific Products and having to talk with the tech support guys down there, like, the Mike Tyndalls and Jim Ellsworth and so on, kudos to your support team and whatever training they go through, because it was very, very rare times that they weren't able to sort me out. So I appreciate all the effort that goes into.
They are some of the hardest working guys in the industry, and I'll tell you that you think what training they go through. Where their training is, they're all users.
Yeah.
They all fought through this stuff, and they just love doing it, and they share information with one another, and they help support each other. And if they're stuck, they don't hesitate to walk down and find a developer or find me to try and help me get them connected with the developers so we can sort through the problems. So there's a lot of close communication going on in the company, but those guys are on the front line, and they usually figure it out before the development people do.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think the one thing that I'd like people to take away from this is just this idea that, we're so used to screen readers now just working. Like we almost take them for granted now, but there was a time when all this stuff was being developed, and there was sort of the dark Middle Ages of in terms of development, when it must have just been a slog, because not only did you have the sort of the hardware technology changing on almost a monthly basis. So, they're constantly coming up with new processors, new memory. It was like a renaissance of hardware, where you were constantly, people were constantly upgrading their computers because the technology was changing so fast. What was that time like for you guys?
Well, it was difficult, because not only were you wrestling with that, with the video and new drivers that would come out and change things, but it was really the applications. And not everything in an application was something you could get access to. In the early days of the 90s, one of the things that kind of helped to drive the innovation in the industry, I think, was this dueling windows that had gotten developed and run by a few different guys in the industry, and these events would happen at CSUN and at Closing the Gap, and the different companies that made screen readers for Windows would get together, and there would be a list of tasks that you would have to accomplish, and each company would get an opportunity to try and accomplish the task. And so the tasks were going to be, simple things by today's standards, of opening a file or running a spell checker or selecting and deleting text or going into an Excel spreadsheet and trying to do something in an Excel spreadsheet. And half the struggle of doing the task was that the screen reader couldn't really do it right, so it was up to the user to innovate and find a good way of getting around the technology problem and finding another way of getting it done. And but that time when we were doing those kinds of things, I think helped to drive the industry, because it kind of forced the developers and the product management people to go in and look at the daily tasks and just try and get some of the basics to work right. I can remember when Ted Henner and I would create tutorials to try and teach Windows with JAWS for Windows, and we would go to a recording studio on a Monday thinking, we'll knock this out in a couple of recording sessions. And about Wednesday afternoon, you'd realize we haven't actually recorded anything yet. Because every time we tried to do something, we would find something that wouldn't work right, and Ted would start scripting, or we'd get on the phone with the developer to start changing stuff. And it was funny because it was at a professional recording studio that wasn't too far from our office in St. Pete, and the guy, he just got used to us. And he knew when we would book the studio and come in, he could go get a cup of coffee and relax because we wouldn't be getting anything done for a few days. But at the end, it worked, and we were able to create audio recordings. In the beginning, the lack of professionalism on those recordings, it kind of came across to users that this really is, an imperfect science. We're not any better at it than you are, and we can make mistakes with you. And I think that kind of helped a lot of people realize that it's not going to be that easy, and they're going to have to learn their way around. And of course, then Windows changes. And when we went from, I remember when we went from Windows 3.11 to Windows 95, there was a massive panic from people because it was like they were used to their memory, their muscle memory, and how they got around in Windows and what they had to do. And when 95 came along and changed that, it was kind of scary time. It's like, you get used to living someplace, and you know how many steps it is from the bedroom to the bathroom and so forth, and then you move and you have to learn a new location, and it's just it's a struggle, but boy, you get through it. And today we're up on Windows 10, and I couldn't even look back to Windows 3.11 or something earlier. I mean, Windows 10, we just know how to get around it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean that you're absolutely right. I mean, the operating system, that was another component that was constantly changing. And yeah, I mean, I remember that jump from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95, and it was a massive jump. Probably the closest analogy in recent memory was that jump from Windows 7 to Windows 8. Although we kind of forget about, let's just not talk about 8. But so that jump from Windows 7 to Windows 10, where it was like almost like a complete change in the way that the operating system worked. So, you guys are sort of had to deal with that too.
Yeah, and when they went from the traditional menu system and applications to the ribbon menu.
Right.
That was a big struggle for a lot of people to get through, and probably still is today.
Yep.
So all that being said, you guys fought the wars. You made it here to 2020. So what is development like these days? Is it easier? You guys have figured out the secret sauce? You figured out the recipe. So is it now more about adding new features, or do you guys still find that you are like just playing catch up to all the different apps, or to what Windows doing, or what the actual hardware is doing?
Yeah. So it first of all, it's so much better in the sense that the basics kind of work. And so a lot of the things that we're trying to overcome today are, you realize that some of it is pretty advanced stuff. And for an average user that wants to get on the computer and launch their browser, as long as you can make sure they're not using the original Edge browser and they're using Firefox or Chrome or IE still, then, the average user is going to be able to get on a computer and get started and learn and be able to do a lot of things productively. Emails generally work pretty good and so forth. It takes me back, and I do remember a speech that Ted had given at an NFB convention, 96, 97 timeframe, when Microsoft was rolling out MSAA for the first time. And, the hope was that all of the AT companies would embrace and adopt this MSAA from Microsoft. It's called Microsoft Active Accessibility, and it was supposed to be the API, so to speak, that we would communicate with. So we wouldn't have to intercept video, we wouldn't do anything on our own. We just wait for Microsoft to deliver the information to us from MSAA, and everything was going to be perfect. And Ted said that, I remember he said something to the effect that if we rely on MSAA to do this, then we're always going to be waiting for Microsoft to deliver the information, and we're going to lose control of it ourselves. And so we never wanted to embrace it. If it worked, we would use it, but we're not going to forego everything we do in order to see that through. So we didn't embrace it, and we took advantage of it where we could, but we used our other approaches, and we adopted things like the object model that's present in applications like Microsoft Office to be able to communicate directly with the application rather than having to use some sort of a bridge to get the information through an accessibility hook that was being implemented that wasn't complete. Because the object model, that's the thing that people, when Microsoft Word has to talk to Microsoft Excel to be able to get an update when an Excel spreadsheet changes and it can change something in your Word document, that's all done through the object model. And this is something that sighted people and everybody using Office is tapped into. So that's very complete and it's thorough and it works well. So we were able to tap into that, and we made these things work much better, way ahead of MSAA ever getting there,
right?
Which it never did. So, But today they've got UI automation, which of course was developed and sold to Microsoft and the community as this is a solution to allow automated testing of things, which is a good thing. And that's what a lot of companies wanted to be able to take advantage of, and software companies would want to take advantage of. So if they implemented UIA, that would help them make a more robust product. And by the way, it will also expose the information for accessibility. So it kind of crosses the T there and dots the I, and they don't have to really think about accessibility as long as they do UIA right. Now, they don't all do UIA right, so we're having to overcome some of those things, but it's getting there. And we see this in the new Edge 2, the Chromium-based Edge browser that released for the first time in January of this year. And out of the box, it just works because it's based on technology that was used with Google Chrome, and because they adopted that, and we already worked with all of this stuff, it just kind of works. Now, there's some UIA work that they still have to do, and you'll see that in this initial release of Edge. Chromium-based Edge is struggling right now with their own screen reader narrator in the operating system, but they'll sort out the UIA and they'll get that stuff working better, and we still have our ways of working around those problems, so we're able to address it and solve it and have JAWS, Zoom Text, and Fusion all working right out of the box here in our February 4th update with this new version of Edge. And I think the new version of Edge is going to be widely adopted. It's going to be the default browser on every PC when you boot it up. And it works pretty good. And you don't have to download Chrome. You don't have to download Firefox to get a good experience going. So, yeah, I think, as the technology has evolved, we can really focus in on making some of those complex things work. Like, we never dreamed of the possibility of being able to do something like flexible web, where you could tell the screen reader to ignore ads on a web page, or make sure that you always start reading at this point on a web page when it loads for me in the future. Things like that, we were just trying to right? Avoid a blue screen and make the basics work.
Right.
And today we're really focused on usability and enhancing the experience for the user. So it's a lot of fun.
I think affordability too. You mentioned Zoom Text and Fusion. Let's move forward a little bit and talk about the FS Portal. Can you kind of tell us what that is and, if that's going to be coming to other countries?
It is. And, one of the things that we've tried to accomplish was JAWS and these products have different prices in different countries depending on what the funding models are like and what the distribution channel is like and so forth. And I mean, I don't think I'm surprising anyone to tell you that, what the price of the product does vary from country to country. Well, in the U.S. market, where there is no or hasn't been really any funding for someone to be able to get access to the technology at home, we came up with what was called the Home Use Program. We rolled that Home Use Program out about 6 or 7 years ago, and it initially was targeted at if your organization had a big license of the software and it was up to date, then we would be able to provide software to those people that were employed there for their home use at a fraction of the cost. Microsoft actually has a home use program. If you Google Microsoft Use at Home, you'll find the home use program for Microsoft, and they used to give away software for free to people that worked in organizations. Today, I think they give discounts to them if the organizations have a big license, and we'll probably look at doing something like that too in the future if we can. We moved away from the home use program and created this portal which allows us to deliver software directly from the portal, so you don't have to go and download the software. You can buy a license, and when you register on the portal, it knows who you are. It's all tied to your email address, and it puts the license file on your computer, and it downloads the right software, and it keeps everything up to date. You don't have to worry about checking for updates because it's going to get them for you automatically. And it's a really nice solution, and we do intend on trying to roll this out in other countries, but we're going to go through our distribution channel to do that because they're so important. They're important for the support side of it. They're important for the sales and marketing side of it. And so we have to be able to step slowly with it. We would have liked to have been further along at this point, but we're still not there yet. But we are committed to it, and we will get it done. But here in the United States, we have a lot of people now that do take advantage of the home use program. They can get JAWS, Zoom Text, and Fusion Home Edition, and they can buy it 1 year at a time, 3 year at a time, or 5 year at a time. And we'll try and roll some solution out. And it could take a different form in different countries. Like there might just be a 5-year version where if there is a funding organization that takes care of helping people out with a solution every 5 years, we're probably better off just selling a 5-year product in that market. So it'll vary from location to location, I'm sure.
Right.
And then, we've also driven the cost of other technologies down, like Braille displays. When I first came into this industry, if you wanted to go out and buy a 40-cell Braille display, it was $5,000, maybe even more. And we were, I think, at the forefront of changing some of the Braille technology and drove the price down by almost half at this point. So you can get a great 40-cell display in the $2,500 to $2,700 US dollar range now. And prices are going to continue to come down as the technology continues to evolve. Unfortunately, it's a very small niche industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There just aren't that many, very few products, whether it be hardware or software, that get sold, and that forces the prices to stay much higher because it's just not that market size.
And sorry to do this, Eric, but you brought up Braille display, so I have to ask, When is the new El Braille 40 coming out?
You know, I know everybody is anxious, and I'm telling you, the wait's going to be worth it. I've gotten my hands on this thing, and while it's a little bigger than your average note taker, to me, the beauty of having a note taker that's a real Windows PC that I can remote desktop to my work computer from a distance and use all the same applications and use my JAWS license that I had on my regular PC on my note taker too. And then in the future, when something goes wrong and I want to change and get a newer computer-based note taker, I can disconnect and take my 40-cell Braille display out, and I still have a 40-cell Braille display.
Right.
And don't have to lose it. So, I mean, everything about El Braille I absolutely love, and they are in the process of working through getting the deployment done here in the U.S. It's tricky getting the image set up and be able to replicate it and make sure everything works right. So I know they're working through that stuff right now. I have to believe that we're going to show up at CSUN here in early March, and we are absolutely going to be distributing. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of orders in.
For sure.
A lot of people are anxious to get it, and nobody is more anxious to see this movie than us.
Yeah. Are there plans to also upgrade the El Braille 14?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that I would imagine they're going to try and create a 14-cell version with the same processor as well. I don't know that they'll be able to do anything with the existing ones that are out there. But
right.
Yeah, I would imagine they're going to build a 14-cell version like the 40 also. But
the one,
you know, if you're running a PC, here's the thing: if you're running a PC, you're probably going to run applications like Word or Excel or Outlook. And in those cases, having a 40-cell display is so much nicer than a 14-cell display.
Sure.
14 cells are great for text messages
right.
and quick things, but you know, if you're going to work with a real PC, get a 40-cell version. You'll be much happier.
Can you give us any sort of sneak peek at maybe what's coming next for JAWS?
Sure. So just to maybe I should go back, because you did ask me what the development is like, and
sure.
I'll tell you, we're kind of gotten into this mode over the past few years, and I'm much happier with it than the way we used to do things. In the past, we would try and come out with a release, of course, in October, which would be our SMA release, and the development people would work on features for that release for the year leading up to it. And so sometimes they'd go away and they'd be developing and changing things for 4, 5, 6 months before we would get a build that we would be able to share with anybody. And we'd have all kinds of changes in the software. And something, you know, you'd put it out and then people would call back and say, hey, this doesn't work the same way it used to work. And when a new release would come out, a lot of users wouldn't touch the new release. They'd wait 3 or 4 months until we settled it down, until we got everything ironed out. So we've gone away from that, and we started really on a 6-week cadence to keep up. And it's been good for a couple of reasons. One is we're not introducing lots of changes in any update that comes out like that.
Right.
So we really have an opportunity, and of course we're running those builds as we're leading up towards that update. So like there's an update that's scheduled for the Tuesday following CSUN, which I think is going to be somewhere around the 19th of the month or something like the 20th of the month, something like that, third week in March.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're already running that build now. We've got, you know, lots of changes. There are still some changes going into it, but we've got a bunch of people now that are already running that software, and it just went out. I know a beta build is going out today, as a matter of fact, as we record this. So we have a lot of people running the release, and when it goes out, I don't worry that we're going to be breaking people's computers.
Right.
There's tens of thousands of people out there that'll get these updates when they come out.
Mm-hmm.
And if we mess something up, it could be a real disaster for everyone. So the short cycle has really helped. And then we also, as we brought Zoom Text into the fold with us here at Freedom Scientific, we always build JAWS, Zoom Text, and Fusion at the same time. So we're not just developing in one product, we're developing in multiple products, and we build them all at the same time, and then we test them all together. So that really helps to ensure that things improve greatly in the fact that they'll get along and they'll work right together and they're in sync. And of course, we went over to this annual release cycle, so we come out in October, just like with an automobile that comes out with the 2020 version in the fall of 2019. We do the same thing with our software. So the 2020 versions all hit in October, and we will update those things right up through probably January next year. There'll be updates coming out for that 2020 version. And when the 2021 release comes out in October, it will not be loaded with lots of changes that they didn't get during the year, because we're going to keep releasing things. So the Braille viewer and the text viewer are things that I've been talking about for a couple of years, and we've had to keep slipping it because other things have come up that have had to take the developers off of it. But we have the team back on this, and to me, this is going to be one of the greatest changes that we've made for a while. This is a feature that will show you the actual text in a window that's being typed or read on the screen, and directly under it you'll see the output of Braille, what the dot configuration is, and a link between the two, so you'll know if it's a sighted teacher looking at the screen, they can tell which dots go with which words.
Right.
And you'll be able to, if you don't want the Braille, if you're just using magnification, for instance, you can just have the text viewer up there, and it will take whatever is being read, whatever the size, whatever the color on screen, and it will put it in the text viewer, and always make it the same size and same fonts, make it much easier to read. But it will have a highlight back on screen, so you'll be able to know exactly where that text is located. And that's all being updated for JAWS and for Fusion, and should hit. It won't hit in March, and maybe not in April, but I would think May at the latest. And we're doing quite a bit with some other areas in the product that we're trying to get focused on, like especially in the education space, so mathematics, and we're working closely with Google as well on Google Docs and Sheets, and trying to continue to make that a better experience for education.
Just to quickly talk about one more feature in JAWS that you guys have incorporated, the OCR functionality. What's kind of the plan for the JAWS OCR? Is it to replace OpenBook, since there's been no real development, I think, on OpenBook for a while?
Yeah, I think that would be the goal, is to continue to evolve the OCR experience that's built into screen reading and screen magnification software. Just build it right in.
Right.
I would like us to get to a point where we could OCR direct to Word, things like that, instead of just putting it into a virtual buffer.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's some areas there where I think we'll continue to build into our software and improve it there. At some point, it may make sense to make another product like an OpenBook. But the OpenBook technology was built on 1989 original development,
right?
And there hadn't been much change in that code over the past 10 years. So Fortunately, it still works.
Yep.
We've had to continue to modify the installer and so forth, but in general, it's a standalone application, and it still runs really well, and it serves a great purpose. I mean, for people who are scanning a lot of material and doing a lot of reading of books and things like that, the product like that is invaluable.
Absolutely.
Geez, 1989. People, Miami Vice was still on TV in 1989. That's how old that is. Eric, listen, it was an absolute delight talking to you. We really appreciate you taking some time and talking with us. Before we let you go, because I know you got to run away, is there anything you want to plug? Where can people find JAWS if they're interested, or more information about any sort of programs that you guys have? Plug away.
So I think one of the things that I would like to make sure that people are aware of, and if you haven't checked it out, please do. If you go to the Freedom Scientific homepage and go to training, we've really expanded the group there. You know, everybody's known Dan Clark for years, who's been working on this stuff. Well, Dan's, got other people in the training department now. Rachel Buchanan is heading it up, and Elizabeth Whitaker is there with them, and they're producing webinars on a monthly basis that are free, and they're updating a YouTube channel to give short bites of information to help people learn things, and they've updated the basic training materials. So with the release of 2020, we've got an updated basic training that's in JAWS. So for trainers or for teachers who are looking for resources, this is a great place to go get all this free material and use it, modify it, use it any way that you would want to try and teach folks. So I would drive people into that training area. And of course, take advantage of our resource up there in Canada, with the Optelec office and the string of dealers across the country that work with them. We've got an awful lot of folks out there that are, that do training and script writing and things like that. So I think, it's a great resource for the folks up there in Canada. And take advantage of updates. When things come out, when updates come out, please go get that stuff, because the operating system's changing fast. Office apps, browsers, everything is changing, and we're trying to keep up with them, but we can't update the older version, so we just need people to get on current software and stay up to date. So.
Perfect. Okay, Eric, well, again, thanks a lot, and take care.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Eric. Bye-bye. That was a nice walk down memory lane.
Kidding, man.
I'm glad we went that direction.
Man, 1995 computers, man, I forgot about those.
Yeah.
But it was a crazy time. Like I don't know what our age demographic of our listeners
I remember,
but I mean I was you'd have to upgrade your computer like every year, otherwise it would be obsolete.
Yeah, I remember 1997. I lost my sight in 95. In 1997, I got my first computer. It was Windows 95. It had JAWS 3.2 on it. I had OpenBook. I had a Braille and Speak note taker, and things. Like you talked about, the blue screen of death. JAWS had something called Dr. JAWS, where it would go in and try to figure things out for you or set things up for you. But it was such a different time.
It really was. And so I imagine like developing something as complex as a screen reader during that time, these guys must have just lost sleep. And one of the things that, I would have liked to have said if we had some time, but I mean, really, you have to give a lot of credit to JAWS and all the people that worked on it for all those years, because they really blazed the trail in terms of developing this technology that allowed so many people to use not only just computers. I mean, if you think of screen readers in general, like everything from using them on computers to using them on smartphones. I mean, these guys were integral to making that technology work. Well, and everybody else since then has sort of, developed their own thing, but, they're standing on their shoulders.
Yeah. And like Eric mentioned, there were a couple earlier software products as well, like Window Bridge and ProTalk. There was a screen reader for OS2. The one thing we didn't get to touch on, and I just thought of it now, of course, is there's also a JAWS version for kiosks, right? So, how long is it going to be before you could actually walk into McDonald's, do a 3-finger double tap, bring up the speech, and be able to place your own order through a touchscreen kiosk?
That'd be amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
That technology, like you say, is all built on the back of, these initial engineers who had the vision.
And you understand that like anything else, it's there's competition across the board. I mean, there are other screen readers out there. Yep. But at the end of the day, the important part is that this is technology that was developed that is helping people on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like and you're a perfect example, Ryan. I mean, how big of an impact did something like JAWS have for you? On your first computer. I mean, it must have been a huge quality of life improvement for you.
That's my dial-up modem that I had on my first computer. But it gave me access to the outside world.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
got me online. It gave me access to, like you said, email, Microsoft Word. Mm-hmm. It gave me the opportunity to go back to school. It gave me the options of employment. Yep. And without any of that, I'd be stuck in the guitar dungeon, playing video games, watching movies.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be understated, I think, that the work that they put in over the years has just, made...
It's changed lives.
Yeah, has made life better for so many people, and they deserve, accolades for that.
Absolutely.
And I like to think of the whole assistive technology field, whether you have competing companies or not, everybody's working towards the same goal, which is, to make life better for people. And, again, he talked about why he entered the field and why he stayed in the field. And we sort of talked about the same thing for ourselves. And at the end of the day, that's what drives all of us. We like the industry because we like helping people. But I mean, God, the amount of sleepless nights they must have had, the developers must have had, and even the tech support people. I mean, every time a new Windows version came out, they must have just been like, oh no, here we go again. Yeah. Or if it wasn't a new Windows version, it was a new version of Office, or it was a new version of whatever.
Well, think about all the computer configurations that are out there. It's not like everybody's just working on an HP or a Dell that has an i5 processor, 8 gigs of RAM. Like I had Freedom Scientific, like Eric said, just released an update in early February for JAWS. And one of the features in the new update was this, JAWS stopped saying this Alt-R description tag you would get on different elements on a website. Well, I was still getting that even after updating. So I emailed, Freedom Scientific's tech support, and they weren't able to reproduce it, So we went back and forth a couple times, and just to show, for me anyway, how experienced they are, they suggested go in and, rename your Chrome, your JAWS Chrome script files, and then have Chrome reload, and it'll just rename them all. And that solved the problem. So being a developer, being a software tech support, being a beta tester, there's so many different browsers and versions of Windows and configurations of systems that it's just got to be, like you say, it's got to be a daunting task.
And I mean, in ways it's better today, but I'm sure in ways it's almost worse, because at least back then you didn't have literally hundreds of different programs or apps like being developed or being released on a daily basis. You mean, you think about the amount of software out there today and how something like JAWS needs to ideally work with everything, or as much as it possibly can. That's not easy. And at least in the 90s, the hardware and the software may have been changing fairly regularly, but at least there wasn't that sheer volume of software out there that it needed to work with. There wasn't 4, 5, 6 different browsers that it needed to try to coordinate with. There was two.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're in a good place now.
But it sounds like they're definitely in a better place. And I think that, the big advantage of doing this FS portal that way is that, again, it's the idea of incremental improvements and updates rather than this huge, big update every 6 months is probably a much better experience for the developers, but it's also probably going to be a lot better experience for the users as well, because things aren't changing dramatically for in terms of the user experience. So
memories.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm all waxing nostalgic about my first Pentium.
Yep.
I wonder where it is. Can you get it in storage?
Really?
No, actually, no, probably not. I'm sure I junked it by now. But man, they should have a computer museum. Where
I'm
you
sure
just
there
go
is.
in and remember what it was like computing on, a Pentium 1. Just be like doing something and then just boop, blue screen of death. Something crashed it. Oh, locked up.
Yeah.
Up.
No, those were the days.
Restart.
Yep. And wait 10 minutes to restart.
Hold on, I got to start up ICQ. AOL Messenger.
Right, yep.
Oh, good Lord. Wow. Well, anything else to say about that?
No,
Did he answer all your questions?
Yep, absolutely.
Are you excited about this new Elbrow?
I am, just because, like he mentioned, it's going to be faster. They put a lot of work into it, so they've got a better, faster processor, 8 gigs of RAM. You can still use your existing JAWS and your existing 40-cell focus braille display. So there's a lot of people waiting for it that are, anticipating its release, and, hopefully there will be some sort of upgrade path that people can take advantage of. But stay tuned, because as soon as we hear when it's available, we will definitely let everybody know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will. I think the real big thing here too is that in terms of Canada is going to be the FS portal.
Yeah,
that's going to be a big change. I can really see there's so many different programs are going that subscription model.
Yep.
And it just makes so much more sense for both the consumer, because they're not faced with a huge cost. It's much easier for people to afford a monthly rate as opposed to dropping $1,000.
Now the portal for JAWS isn't monthly; it's yearly. So it's 1 year, 3 year, or 5 year.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. But still, even so,
absolutely,
it's going to be a lot more affordable than.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they work that out with the distributors. Because he mentioned, it's going to be different in different regions. So. Mm-hmm. We'll have to wait and see, because as it is right now, I believe a 1 year license to JAWS from the FS portal is like $99. So
wow,
wow,
that's
what
amazing.
do they and how does that work for the distributors? Do they get a percentage of that? Do they get I have no idea how that all works, right? Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, anything to bring the cost down of screen reading and independence for people is I'm all for.
Well, and I think that they're faced with again there are competitive factors and the market that you have to look at, and it's just, I'm sure for them it's getting a little bit hard to compete with some of the other options out there that are lower cost or free in some cases, and I'm sure that they have to look at that. So, but again, the important thing about all of this is that the people who need it have choice in terms of what they can use.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'll go back to what I've mentioned in the past is sometimes you get what you pay for. You pay for JAWS, you have access to live people at the end of a phone for tech support, or through your distributor for tech support. All these resources for training and so on are available. With some of these free products, those are paid services. So, your screen reader part might be free, but again, if you want training, some of that's paid for. Support is done through email lists. It's not always convenient for everybody. So one tool doesn't work for everybody.
All right. Hey, Ryan.
Rob.
Where can people find us?
They can find us online at atbanter.com.
They can also drop us an email if they so desire at cowbell
at atbanter.com.
They can also find us on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram. They can find us on Twitter.
They can find us everywhere.
That's right.
Even on your smart device.
You're correct. All right. Well, hey, you want to tickle people with a feather about next week's show, or no?
Tickle people with a feather? No.
I think we should start doing that. Why not?
I thought about it too.
I think we should tease.
But then, I thought about it too, but then it gives them a chance to bail on it without having to listen to it first.
But they'll read the show notes anyways. You don't give our audience, our hardcore fans,
all right,
enough credit.
Next week, we are talking with a returning guest about his journey to the Paralympics.
All right. Well, that is going to about do it for us this week. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Big thanks to Eric Damery,
Vice President, Software Products Management at Vispero.
Man, look at that. You came to rehearsals yesterday. We will see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com, or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840, or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com.
Whoa, look at that. Master of the one take.